We've been hearing a lot this morning about brands getting into content. Everybody's a media owner these days. And journalists rushing away from the profession into corporations and agencies and what have you. So how do you see that trend as one of the biggest and most influential mainstream media companies? And what does that mean for you as you're constructing the strategy moving forwards?
I think you can take one of two approaches. One which a lot of journalists, and if you read David Carr's piece yesterday, I think, in the New York Times, you can take the approach that this is the end of journalism as we know it, church and state is collapsing, and this is pretty terrible for everybody, and it's a mistake. Or you can take a kind of a reader-focused approach, which is to say that as media companies, the one thing we are really competing for is the single non-renewable resource our audiences have, which is their time. So now, in addition to worrying about a Wall Street Journal reader perhaps going to the FT or Guardian or the New York Times, I now have to worry about that same reader perhaps going to watch the Red Bull jump from outer space, or reading something from GE about innovation, or from IBM about green planets. So I think the number of choices that our readers have dramatically increased, and with a lot of ambitious and aggressive and bold brands wanting to become content creators and publishers, we just have a new set of people who could potentially take the time our audience would have had with us, and I think that's the real challenge. I think the bigger challenge for big mainstream media companies is first to acknowledge that journalism isn't kind of the end all of what it used to be, that it is now part of a conversation, and trying to attract, keep, and bring back audiences is as much a part of the role of journalism as it is of our marketing or advertising departments. And I think that mindset is a little harder if you have grown up with this very firm church and state issues where all advertising was confined to the kind of the right rail ghetto, if you will, on a website, and now advertisers are saying that we really don't want to be in that ghetto. We want to kind of talk to us about how we can kind of provide our content in an environment where your reader is consuming your content. I don't think any advertiser out there, at least the ones that we deal with, is saying confuse the reader or kind of hide the fact that this is from a GE or an IBM. They actually want it very clearly delineated. The issue is most big media companies are still figuring out what that means. And I think the delay and the challenge is as much on our side as it is on the side of companies wanting to go down this path. If I'm at the Wall Street Journal, or if I'm at one of our big traditional brands, I do have a legacy and a brand image and a perception of what it is to protect. So I think we often are criticized for being somewhat behind the curve when it comes to startups, but people forget that we do carry the burden of a pretty good legacy, and I'm happy to carry that burden. I also think that brands sometimes confuse newness and innovativeness with results. I often hear, for example, some of these new websites, whether it's BuzzFeed or Quartz or some of the newer ones, very proudly say that 50, 60% of our audience comes through social every day. Sounds fantastic, right? Brands love that. But what does that really mean? It means that on any given day, you have no idea who half your audience is going to be. If you come to the New York Times, if you come to the AP, the Washington Post, or the FT, you very well know the audience that we deliver every day to your brands.